Let's take a breath. We welcome Jamie back here with us this morning. He'll be back during our offering time also. And for now, let's just take that in. Something's calling me. So as we take a breath, I welcome you to September. Believe it or not, we're in September. I say this every month, but we're in September, a new month. And we have a new theme this month. The theme is the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening. This is a time of great awakening. And an awakening is to waken out of a deep sleep, or to have an awareness, a sudden awareness usually, of something that's going on, or to have a realization of something. That's what awakening is all about. And so this month, we're just going to be exploring the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening that's happening for the world, the Great Awakening that's happening for all of us. As the reading says, as Ernest Holmes said in the reading, now is the time to awaken out of sleep. Now is the time to awaken out of sleep. And the belief in a life apart from God is a dream. A belief in a life apart from God is a dream. And now is the time to awaken from that dream, from that sleep. And so that's what we're going to be exploring right here and right now, every Sunday for the rest of this month. So let's take a breath together as we just think about this act of awakening. Think about how the world has awakened. Think about how we've had this great awakening that's happening everywhere, all around us. There was a great awakening back in May, when there was the George Floyd situation, when George Floyd was killed. There was a great awakening that happened in this country, and subsequently and consequently across the world. We became so aware of all the things that were going on, so many things that we had been sleeping through. So many people had been sleeping through social injustice. So many people had been sleeping through what was going on with the pandemic before it reached our shore. So many people have been sleeping through inequality. So many people have been sleeping through so many things. And then all of a sudden we have this great awakening. All of a sudden we're all called to be home, to be still, to turn within, to go inward, so that we could have this great awakening. And so that's what we're looking at this month. That's what we're looking at today. At how are we being called to awaken? How have we been called to awaken? My topic for today is the Van Ripple effect. The Van Ripple effect. I'm sure we all know the story of Rip Van Winkle. We've heard it from childhood. Rip Van Winkle, who lived in this town, and he was a simple man. He worked. Well, he didn't really like to work, but he did a little work the little work that he could get away with. And he loved to fish. He loved to hunt. And the kids in the town loved him. The people in the town loved him. He was a kind man. But his wife was always very concerned about him not working, about him not being more industrious, about him not being more ambitious. And so she sort of bugged him a lot about it. The times were different then, so the author called it nagging, that he had a nagging wife. So in order to get away from his wife, he decided to go just wander up into the Catskill Mountains. And he and his dog Wolf went up into the mountains one day, and he came upon a group of dwarfs who were playing games, and they had a big keg of liquor and something, and they offered it to him, and he started to play with them, and he started to drink from the keg that he had and that they had. And then he decided to lie down and take a nap. Well, he took a nap, and when he woke up, it was 20 years later. And so 20 years had passed. He didn't know where he was, what was happening. So he got up and he went back down to the village where he lived, but he didn't recognize anybody. By the time he got back down there 20 years later, he was an old man with a long white beard. His clothing was different than everybody else's. He didn't recognize anybody. Nobody recognized him. His wife had passed away. His kids were gone. Everything had changed. All of his friends were gone. And he was in a different world. He had gone to sleep for 20 years, and the world had passed him by. And one of the big things that happened for him was that the town inn, it was called an inn then by the time he got back down to the town, the inn was now called a hotel. He didn't know what that was, but it was called a hotel. When he left, there was a picture of King George on the outside of the inn. When he came back, there was a picture of George Washington. And people were talking about elections, and people were talking about voting and talking to him about voting. He had no idea what they were talking about. He had no idea what voting was all about. He had no idea what an election was all about. And the whole thing was that the point of this is that life had passed him by. Life had passed him by. He had gone to sleep, and life had passed him by, and he had no idea what was going on. Martin Luther King used to tell the story, and he also wrote about it, the story of Rip Van Winkle. And he talked about the fact that the revolution had passed him by, that Rip Van Winkle slept through the revolution. The world had changed, and he had slept through it. And so that's what I am inviting us to look at today. I'm inviting us to look at, are we sleeping? Are we sleeping through this time? Are we sleeping through this time? Yes, there was this great awakening that happened back in May. That was this great awakening that pierced the consciousness of us all, that pierced the consciousness of the world back in May. But you know, we get lulled into a false sense of security. We get lulled into a false sense of, oh, well, that's over now. And then we start to go back to sleep. We start to fall asleep again. We start to want to just take a little nap again. We want to hit that snooze button again. And what I'm inviting you to do is just take a look at not falling asleep again, taking a look at what was it that woke up inside you since we've been out, since we've been home a lot, since we've been out with the pandemic. We still have this pandemic. We still have these life-threatening situations that are happening in our world today. We still have COVID-19. We still have racial and social injustice. We still have income inequality. We still have all those things that keep us from experiencing the oneness of life, that keep us all from experiencing the good that is available to all of us. So the thing for us to do is to be awake, to be aware, to make sure that we are not moving into that Rip Van Winkle syndrome of falling asleep and just staying asleep. And many of us are doing that. Many of us have been doing that for so long. That's what was happening in the world before we came inward, before the big awakening that we just had within the last 6 months. We were doing what Ricky Byers sings about, is that we were walking asleep, dreaming we were awake. We were walking asleep, dreaming we were awake. We were walking asleep, dreaming we were awake. And as the song goes, this world confused me, and it was hard to discern what was up and what was down, what was real, what was not. And so, are we still walking asleep? We don't want to do that. We want to be awake and stay awake. We have awakened to our own divinity. We're beginning to awake to our own divinity. We're beginning to awake to our own oneness. We're beginning to awake to the world around us, and to recognize that we are all one. And that's the greatest awakening that we can have. The greatest awakening is the awakening and the awareness and the realization that God is all there is. The greatest awakening, the greatest awareness, the greatest realization is that God is the only life, the one life, and that one life, that one source, is a source of us all. And so when we come into this awareness, we have to stay awake to it. So I'm inviting you today to really do a couple of things. The first one is take a breath. Right now, let's just take a breath. Take a breath and just really allow that breath to center you. Allow that breath to center us, to just take a deep look at, what is it that's calling you? What is it that's calling you to wake up right here and right now? Is it love that's calling you? Is it peace that's calling you? Is it patience that's calling you? Is it balance or harmony that's calling you? Because it's all the call of God. But how do you identify that which is calling you to wake up? That which is calling you to wake up. Is it justice that's calling you to wake up? And the thing for us to do is to be so aware of what's going on with us inwardly, so aware of what's happening for us internally, so aware of what's happening for us in consciousness. that we can recognize the call when it comes, the call that's saying, wake up, wake up. It's time to wake up. Ernest Holmes says that awakening is a process of evolution. It's a process of evolution. A little here, a little there, until the whole eye is opened to the head. The whole eye has been opened to the fact that we are not apart from God, and that we are not, that there's nothing different from good, that we are not different from good, that God is life itself. Life is God, and good is the only power that is, and only power that can be. The only power that is, and the only power that can be is good. And so that good is always calling to us. That knowingness that God is all there is, that knowingness that there is no life apart from God, and that we need to awake to that. We need to awake to that. And we awake, as he said, if there's a process, a little here, a little there. We don't all wake up at once. Sometimes we spring awake from a nightmare, and sometimes we don't. But the whole point is that we have to recognize that awakening is a process of evolution. It is a process of evolution. Think about just when you're waking up from a deep sleep, and you open your eyes and you stretch a little bit, and you think about, you don't want to get up, and you open up a little bit, and you start to realize, I got to get up, and I gotta get going, I gotta get my day going, or whatever the case may be. And we start to do that as a part of a process. We kind of move around in our bodies, begin to realize that, okay, now I'm waking up, now I'm becoming aware, now I'm becoming in tune or aligned with myself, with my inner beingness, so that I can move forward into my day. That's how we usually wake up. And that's what Holmes is describing when he's saying a little bit here, opening one eye, a little bit there, opening another eye, until the whole eye is open to the fact that there is no life apart from God. There's no life apart from God. Life is not different from good. And those are the things that it is so important for us to recognize. And so if there's no life apart from God, then there's no life apart from each other. There's no life apart from any of us. And that's what we have to wake up to again, that there's only one life. We are all a part of this one life. We are all in this life together. And it is so important for us to begin to answer the call, answer that inner call that's calling to us right here, right now. Answer it so that we can begin to move forward in life and live in the one life. Live in the one life. Live together as one. Live together as one, and not fall back to sleep. Not fall back to sleep. You know, the things that we are going through, as I've said here before, the things that we are experiencing now, just with social inequality, all those things, these are things we've experienced before. These are things we've been through many times before. But when we think about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we were dealing with some of the same issues. People were really rallying around voters' rights and voting rights, and getting people registered to vote, and having the right to vote, and getting the voting rights bill passed. That happened, and everyone rallied around it. And then people fell asleep because they thought that's been taken care of. We don't have to be vigilant about that any longer. We don't have to think about that any longer because it's already taken place. And then we look up now and we begin to recognize that we still are dealing with voter suppression. We still are dealing with people, the Voting Rights Act being chipped away at. We still are dealing with the facts that more and more rights are being diminished. And what's happening is because people are falling asleep again. People have hit that snooze button and say, oh, well, I don't have to worry about that any longer because that's all taken care of. That was taken care of in the past. And you know what? The Great Awakening is reminding us that awakening is always happening. Awakening is always happening. And as we wake up to what's calling us, the thing for us to do, the second thing for us to do is stay woke. Stay woke. We have to stay woke. We have to stay vigilant. We have to stay aware. We have to live in that place of awareness. We can't fall asleep again. We have to know that What I want for myself, I have to want for you. What you want for yourself, you have to want for me. We have to know that we're all, as I said, we're all in this together. We're all in this life together. We're all in this life together. And so we have to walk through this world together. We have to walk through this life together. Martin Luther King said that we have to all recognize, we must recognize that we must learn to live together as brothers, or we will all perish together as fools. We must all learn to live together as brothers, or we will all perish together as fools. But the important thing for us to get is that we do it together, whichever one it is. If we're living together or if we're perishing, it's together, because there's only one life, there's only one world, and we all live in it. And so this is what the awakening is for each of us, to be aware that, yes, I love my life. I want my life to be good. I want my life to be big. I want my life to be expanded. I want all these different things I want. And I also want these things for you. I also want these things for all of us. I also want these things for everyone. Everyone. Because until all of us are free, until all of us are abundant, until all of us are prosperous, until all of us are living in wholeness, then none of us is. None of us is. And these are the things that we have to awaken to. And again, now that we are awake, stay woke, stay vigilant. Do the things that you can do. Look at how you're living your life. What is it that you can do to make the world a better place? If it's deepening in your own consciousness, if it's doing your own spiritual work, it makes the world a better place, because your life changes and everything around you changes. Because your vibration changes, everything around you changes. You begin to attract more and more of what you want into your life, more and more of what you want, and having the kind of world you'd like to live in. And as a consequence, it expands out into the world. And so this awakening that's happening is so important for all of us. This staying awake is so important for all of us. This being concerned about each other. This being connected. Yes, we want to stay connected with our community. We want to stay connected with our congregation. We want to stay connected out into the broader community. We want to take the love and the connection that we have out into the broader community. We want to make sure we're all okay. We want to make sure that we all have opportunities. We want to make sure that the love that we share is shared everywhere. It's shared everywhere. This is a part of what walking awake is all about. This is a part of what walking awake is all about. Take nothing for granted. Don't take people for granted. Don't take situations for granted. Be grateful in each and every moment. Be grateful in each and every moment for the friends that we have, for the loved ones that we have, for the strangers that we meet, for the people who come in and out of our lives, for the people we can help, for the acts of kindness that we experience, for the opportunities to show gratitude that we have. Being so grateful for all of these things. Being so grateful for all of these things gives us the opportunity to walk in wakefulness, to walk through this world awake without falling asleep again, without playing Rip Van Winkle again. This is what I'm inviting us all to do. And so the other thing I'd like us to keep in mind is to let your life articulate God's vision. God has a vision for each one of us. God has a vision for all of our lives. God has a vision for itself as each one of us. Let your life articulate that vision. Let your life articulate that vision, because whatever is happening for us, whatever it is that's calling to us, whatever it is that's calling us to come deeper, that's the call of God. That's the call of pure spirit. And so when we're being called that way, when we're being called to change something, we go back to the vision and questions. What must I change? What must I become? When we're being called to become something, when we're being called to change something, when we're being called to grow in a particular way, when we're being called to do that, when we start to do that, that's how our lives articulate the vision. That's how our lives articulate how it is God wants to show up. And so we want our own livingness to be an articulation of God's vision. What must I release so that I can create a space for God's vision? What must I release? When we start to let those things go, we are articulating the vision. This is what wakefulness does for us, because we have to be awake to know what it is we need to let go. We have to be awake to know what it is we must become. We have to be awake to know what it is we need to embrace. What spiritual quality do we want to embody? We have to be awake to know that. What spiritual quality is seeking expression through me? I have to be awake to know that. I have to be alert to know that. I have to be vigilant to know that. If order is seeking expression through me, then by me having order in my life, I'm articulating that vision. I'm articulating that vision. If love is seeking expression through you, then by you allowing more love into your heart, by you opening up to forgiveness and releasing and letting go of grudges and resentments and anger and all that stuff that would hold you back. When you recognize that these things are blocking you from experiencing all and expressing all of the love that there is, then you are awake to that something that's calling you. It is that forgiveness that's calling you, that love that's calling you. And when you are awake to that, then you start to do that practice. Then you start to do the forgiveness practice. You start to release the anger. You start to release all the judgment. You start to release all that stuff. Then we begin to recognize that I'm articulating God's vision. I'm articulating, by my very livingness, I'm articulating the vision. By my very livingness, I'm articulating the vision. And so this is what I'm inviting you today to do, to listen to that call from deep within. Wake up to that call from deep within. That's calling you forward, that's calling you to go deeper. And when you go deeper, we're going deeper in spirit. We're going deeper in God. We're going deeper into oneness. And we're beginning to recognize just what oneness is all about, just how much oneness is really being made manifest in this world. You know, I realized this morning when I started to think about this Zoom call, this Zoom service that we were having today, that technology has really brought us into oneness in a way that we would never have thought of it before. It has helped us to experience oneness in a way we would never have thought. Technology makes us to realize that there really is only one world. We don't have the boundaries. We don't have the territorial boundaries that we used to have. With technology, there's just one world. You just get on the internet and you're everywhere. You can go anywhere you want. That's when we begin to realize that those boundaries are all superficial. Those boundaries are all superficial. They're man-made boundaries. There's only one world. There's only one life. There's only one power. There's only one presence. There's only one of us here. This life is God's life. And it shows up as each one of us, everywhere, everywhere. It shows up as each one of us everywhere. We have to wake up to that. We have to wake up to the call of that, the necessity of being aware of that is what's calling us to go deeper so that we can experience this great awakening. We can experience the great awakening and the awakening into our own divinity at a deep, deep, deep level. And as we awaken into our own divinity, we create a space for others to awaken into their own divinity and to awaken into the allness and the fullness of God. And that's what we want to do always. That's what we want to do always. And so I'm inviting you to wake up to what's calling you. Wake up to what's calling you forth, and then heed that call. Don't continue to walk asleep, dreaming you're awake. Keep walking forward in wakefulness. Keep walking forward in God. Keep walking forward in deepening in your spiritual practice. And one of the things that I just thought about was that the 10 golden minutes that I had talked about a couple of weeks ago at the community call last week. So many people were talking about how that was playing out in their lives. What's that's really beginning to mean for us as we first thing in the morning, upon awakening, the first thing in the morning is being aware of the power and the presence of God right where you are. First thing in the morning, being aware that there's but one life, and that life is God's life. That life is my life right here, right now. First thing in the morning, first thought, God. And then when we wake up to that, then we have dissolved. We have, as Ernest Holmes says, waking up to the realization that there is no life apart from God. Letting go of the belief that there is a life apart from God. Waking up to the realization that there is no life apart from God. And so when we wake up first thing in the morning and start our morning with there's only one life, that life is God's life. That life is my life now. And then that next step of saying, and I know that everything is working together for good in my life. When we get into that aspect of our awakening, then we go through our day. We go through our day and through our days in the awareness of our own divinity and in our awareness of our own oneness with God, in our awareness that God is always right where we are, always right where we are. And if God is always right where we are, God is right where everyone is. Everyone is. And so we can learn to look at the world totally differently with this great awakening. We begin to look through the eyes of love and know that we cannot be in a place of love and look through the eyes of hatred at anyone or anything. So we're looking through the eyes of love. This is what the great awakening is all about. Wake up to love, wake up to light, wake up to peace, wake up to harmony, wake up to joy, wake up to balance, wake up to God, wake up to the best life you can ever live. The best life you can ever live is what you want to wake up to. The best life you can ever live is a life that is living the allness and the fullness of God. That's what I invite you to do right here and right now. So let's take a deep breath as we just affirm within our entire being that we aren't falling asleep, we are wide awake. And let's turn into prayer right here and right now. And so as we just move into this time of knowing and sensing and feeling the presence of God, knowing that this presence of God is the only presence, this power of God is the only power, this life of God is the only life, the breath of God is the only breath. And this onlyness that is God is my very life. This onlyness that is God is the life of each of us here this day. It's the life of each of us here this day. The only life, one life. And it is from this place of awareness, of knowing that it is our life, it is my life, that I speak the word for each of us this day. I know that as we move forward into wakefulness, as we move forward into the awareness of the presence of God, we move forward into in love, in peace, in harmony, in joy, and all the qualities of God. And I know that as we do this, healing is happening in each and every life, everywhere that healing is necessary. Healing in the body temple is happening already. Every organ, cell, tissue, function of every body is filled with that radiant healing presence of God. In our bodies of affairs, the presence of God is healing. In our bodies of affairs, and it's showing up as prosperity, as abundance, as increase over and over and over again as we release and let go of lack and limitation of any kind. This word goes out to anyone who's affected by COVID-19, whether they're experiencing it themselves or have lost loved ones or have loved ones experiencing it, whatever the case may be. God is in the midst of everything. Healing is happening everywhere. Healing is happening everywhere. Healing is happening everywhere, for God is everywhere, everywhere present. God is the comforter. God is the all that is making all things new in every life. And so I'm just knowing in this moment that as I pause momentarily to in this circle of prayer, I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer. You may speak their names silently aloud. You may speak them now. And so for all those whose names are spoken here this day, I know that God is right where each of them is, blessing and keeping and healing them and lifting them up and keeping them safe and guiding and directing. I know that the presence of God is in the midst of every situation and circumstance, everywhere. That wholeness is everywhere. For God is everywhere. And so for the word spoken here, I just say, thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you, Father, Mother God, for the perfect manifestation of this word. I know indeed that all is well, for I know indeed that all is God. And I simply allow it to be. And so it is. Amen.